go out in front of the world and put on a face and hide my pain. Who are you? Who am I to tell you how to cope when you're dealing with a pain or you're dealing with a struggle that you never experienced before or that you never thought you would have to deal with? So, Marcellus Wiley, I know we talk track more than any other show. What is your reaction to Sha'Carri Richardson potentially missing the Olympics over a failed drug test?
Yeah, my first reaction is I'm actually relieved because of the circumstances. I'm gonna be real about this. I owe her an apology that mentally I was having a conversation thinking when the news broke that it was performance enhancing, steroids, etc. And then it came out to be weed. And then I realized, oh, okay, I know what's going on right here because I've been through this situation before. I did lose my mother while I was still an active player in the NFL. And you know what? It didn't give me a license to ill. It did not give me a license to break rules and restrictions. The thing about this one is so many players that used to smoke weed and play, I had teammates as well. There's a Percy Harvin quote out there that says it wasn't a game he played in 9 years that he wasn't high. Percy Harvin. So I know that this has always been around the culture. Let's talk about the circumstances, because the guys who used to play and used to get high used to always say, don't pay the stupid tax. And what is the stupid tax? That means you know when they're going to test, and you also know the amount they're going to test for. Don't get caught. So in this situation, I'm looking at Sha'Carri and I'm saying simply, you got two choices, not three. You thought you had a third. Don't smoke weed, whatever the marijuana, edibles, whatever you're on, or smoke it and don't get caught. But then in this world today, there's a third option, I think, that is being feelings driven. It's being driven by your own justifications of behavior. And it's really reversing the equation of logic. So people are going through their own circumstances. I went through my circumstance of losing my mother. And then because they're going through that circumstance, they think that is now going to empower them to do what they want to do. And that's not how the world works. We talk about this situation right now. It's unfortunate. It certainly is a trivial conversation about the legalization of weed in America and in sports. We'll get to that. But the point is, I'm sorry, you knew the rules, you broke them. You got to deal with the consequences.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack here. I will start by saying this. You could submit that Sha'Carri's support staff and society failed her in not adequately providing her athletically legal ways to grieve and to cope with the loss of her mother, as I'm sure she's still trying to do. Now, with that being said, there are stupid rules in sports.
Okay.
But you still have to adhere to the stupid rules in sports, regardless of how stupid they are.
Yeah.
Before there was Sha'Carri Richardson, there was a man by the name of Christian Coleman. You want to know why we ain't talking about Christian Coleman? Because he's suspended right now.
Yeah, he gone.
And he's suspended because of a stupid rule. In track and field, if you have a whereabouts failure, 3 of them over 12 months, you get suspended. Christian Coleman had a whereabouts failure. As an Olympic athlete or an aspiring Olympic athlete, you have to update your location whenever and wherever you travel to. Because if a drug tester comes to your home and you are not there, strike one. So Christian Coleman, reigning world champion in the 100 meters. He's not going to be at the Olympics this year because of a stupid rule. Gabby Thomas, the fastest living woman to run the 200 meters. She just ran the fastest time ever, second to FloJo. She was provisionally suspended because she had a whereabouts failure. 3 of them. If not by the grace of an Uber receipt showing that she was home when the drug tester said she wasn't, we would not be seeing her, the fastest woman alive in over 200 meters, running at the Olympics. A stupid rule. But you got to adhere to stupid rules. We have seen greater athletes be punished for longer for something lesser because of stupid rules. So the fact of the matter is, regardless of how dumb the rule is, you have to adhere to it. Now, it's a loss for a lot of people. Probably the fans.
Yeah.
Sha'Carri, Nike, the games. It's a loss for a lot of people. But so, as I look at it, let's please not make this racial.
Who did that?
Everybody trying to. It's not racial. It is not an American rule. The rule for her suspension is because of WADA, World Anti-Doping Agency. World. It is not about America, and it is not about trying to hold someone down because of the color of their skin or because of their race. There are so many racial issues in society that we have to be very accurate when we try to bring them up. It is not an American restriction. It is a world restriction. So that's the other thing on my first slap that I just needed to clarify.
Yeah, I'm glad that you talked about it in those terms. And you really put the boundaries out there, and I want to expand on those boundaries. One, missing your testing up to 3 times is not even a stupid rule in itself, because the guys who are guilty are intentionally missing those tests.
Could be true.
So no, that ain't no could be true. It is true. Let me tell you that. 2, Sha'Carri, you lost your discipline, and now you're going to be disciplined. I'm going to remind you of something you told me before that is actually one of the great Wileyisms. Discipline is choosing what you want most over what you want now. Now, what clouds this one is, it's not her own doing. She's grieving a loss. So in that grieving process, what are the consequences of your actions? And what this situation shows us that there could be grave consequences, because the Olympics only comes one every 4 years, grave consequences by your choices. But it's still a stupid tax that you gotta pay. And I want people to separate the emotional pull of her losing her mother from the reality of this is not still an opportunity for you to not abide by the rules. Let me tell you about these same rules from WADA, from USADA. God, this is so easy. The drug is banned in competition periods. Okay, so far most people are like, what does that mean? It's defined as beginning at 11:59 at night on the day before a competition and ending at its conclusion. Come on now. Come on, man. Wait a minute. You just basically told me a few hours. You got to be under 150 nanograms per milliliter. Okay, so now we're having a different conversation, because with reality, smoking weed, whatever your marijuana level was it right before the race? Was it a part of your training cycle? Because marijuana stays in your system up to a month. Cocaine, heroin, 2 to 5 days. So if you think about this situation, and God, I know too much about this because I had too many weed smoking friends and teammates. They know how to cycle in and cycle out. And that's why they always say, don't get caught or don't do it at all. That's the tough one about this, the emotional pull because of her loss.
Let's stay with the emotional pull, because of her grieving a tremendous loss, a loss that some people have had to deal with in life, and if you haven't yet, you will have to eventually, but we all have to deal with tough things in life, so I'm not going to weigh one against another. But because of her grieving, I'm reminded of this. You don't make rules based upon exceptions. You make rules based upon the norm.
Yes.
If you're driving to the hospital and you're with your significant other, say you're with your spouse, with your girlfriend, whatever the case may be, and her water breaks. Got to get to a hospital ASAP. So you run a red light.
Yeah.
Well, we can't now remove all red lights in the nation because your running of the red light was actually very justified in the instance.
Yeah.
You actually have to have a rule based upon a norm, not an exception. But also, rules aren't necessarily in place just to protect you. Most rules are actually in place to protect other people. I recently said this on Twitter, but I'll say it on the show. You can say it's cool to legalize weed in competition while you're running in a straight line, but it's probably not great to legalize weed in competition if you're throwing a javelin. It's probably not great to legalize weed in competition if you're using a pole to elevate over a pole 18 feet high, the pole vault. It's probably not great or safe to legalize weed in competition if you're throwing a discus, spinning around, and then heaving an object roughly 180 to 250 feet through the air with people, referees and whatnot, marking the distance. It's probably not a great idea. We have rules for the norm, not rules for the exception. So while this might be a merit-based exception, if you will, you don't make a rule based upon an exception.
No, you don't. And that's what's unfortunate about this situation, that maybe in her emotional state, that clouded her vision of seeing right from wrong, and now she has to deal with the consequences. She made this bed, it's time to lie in it. And Richardson's suspension has generated several opinions on why she got suspended. So, Acho, should marijuana be legal in sports?
That's a tough question because it's legal in some aspects in some states of society. Overall, I will say no. Marijuana should not be legal in competition. Remember what we were talking about, people. In this specific instance, you cannot smoke or edible or whatever the case may be from 11:59 prior to competition until competition is over.
Right.
So as I look at it, should marijuana be legal in sports? No, because do you want a pitcher throwing a 100-mile-an-hour fastball under the influence